well, it started with Kayla and you guys, but you guys came to our live stream and watched us suffer, and now we're here.
Hey guys, welcome to LoveCast, the Boys Love podcast. I'm your host Kayla, and with me are my other hosts, Pixie and Alexa.
Hello.
So today we're joined by friends of the podcast, Edison and DC from the YouTube channel Femmes React. And today's topic we'll be discussing is actually a suggestion from Edison, so shout out. I thought it was a great topic. It's how BL has impacted our lives. So I was telling them before we started recording that this could turn into a mini therapy session, but we'll attempt to stay on track. Attempt. That's the key word.
What's on track?
Right, what is on track?
To begin with, so.
But yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Mm-hmm. Before we jump into that, Edison and DC, do you guys want to introduce yourselves a little? Tell us about your channel, that kind of stuff, for the people who might not know yet.
Oh yeah, I'm Edison. Me and DC have been doing Femmes React together probably for about more than a year now, and we just, react to the BL that we want to watch and make non-controversial, insightful comments. We're humorous, but serious when it counts, and break down how we feel and we tell it to you, and it's usually the correct opinion. So yeah.
Love that.
We are reacting on YouTube. We're doing some Korean BLs and stuff like that on Patreon. And I even started doing watch parties over on Twitch. So right now we're doing A Boss and a Babe. And it's a little bit different from our normal product that we do for YouTube, in that where it's just we're reacting. Where at the watch party, it's more like we're all watching together. Unfortunately, it seems like I'm the only person who hasn't seen the episode yet, but everybody else has already seen A Boss and a Babe coming through. But it's a lot more enjoyable because it's more interactive with the community. Because like after every quarter of a section, we pause and we talk about it, and it's a little bit more relaxed, and we're making jokes, and one of the characters named Cher, so of course we're going to make jokes about that. But yeah, so we actually are doing a lot of stuff with and reacting and connecting with the community and building a community of Femmes React, which I call them the family. No. The family, the Fem family.
No, from Edison.
I know.
I feel like that doesn't really tell people who we are, though. I mean, what are some quick ways for people to just know who we are? I think we're both Libras. That's a good start.
I'm a Libra too.
Oh, okay. Domination. And I'm not sure what else.
That's all you need to know.
Right.
I feel like it's interesting, how I don't know how we even got here with Kayla and Alexa and Pixie in the first place.
Yeah. It started with Kayla and you guys, but you guys came to our live stream and watched us suffer, and now we're here.
Edison was willing to show tits to help us get money, so
yes.
I feel like
I never really followed through. I mean,
we started from the bottom, now we're here.
That's how I feel about the podcast too. So it's coming up at the same time. Is that what they call it?
Yeah, I mean, We could, like, the first season of this podcast could just be buried. Like, let's be honest.
See, every time you bring it up, it encourages people to go back and watch more. This is what I'm saying.
So what you're saying is that whatever the viewers do, they shouldn't go to the first season of the podcast that's up on the internet that everybody can see right now.
Definitely don't go watch Pixie's interview with Drake.
No, I wasn't mentioning it this time.
It's like we're doing a bingo card where we have to mention that every episode recently.
Oh, God, you're gonna get people curious now. It's a train wreck.
Wow, that definitely wasn't.
You keep talking about it now. I have to go see it.
No, you really don't.
Like, wow,
that's trauma. No, it's painful. It is painful.
Whenever somebody's like, "Don't do this," well, I've got to go do it. You told me not to do it. Now I've got to. You're not the boss of me.
Sounds like my 5-year-old.
Well,
Mom says don't do it, so I must go do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
How do we
So back on track.
Yeah, how do we start?
Do we want to? I don't know. Do you want to like go around individually and talk? So yeah, we could start with our guests, whichever one of you want to talk about how BL has personally impacted your life.
Oh, I have a story. I have a long, winding story. I'll let Edison go first.
What?
He has to warm up.
Oh,
He's
okay.
loading right now.
Yeah.
Especially for me, it was like I first got into realized that born queerness and all this other kind of stuff. Then I started getting into a lot of Western media, queer media, and it was great finally seeing yay, the gayness part. But I don't know if you've watched Western queer media in the early 2000s. It was just depressing as hell. Yeah. It was just like everybody died. It was just like there was just no joy. Also, it was very white.
Yes.
And then you had Queer as Folk, and then you had Noah's Ark, which was great for me and having representation so I can see myself on the screen. But overall, I kind of got away from queer media because it was just depressing. Then when I was in Australia, I was living in Australia, and then I was looking for things to watch. And a Thai friend of mine suggested that I watch this show. Sodas. So I think it was about 2017. I watched Sodas and I was like, oh my God, this is great. And he was like, oh, watch this, Waterboy. And so I just started watching these off of his
how did you not end up stopping watching after
Waterboy?
No,
at the time that was Waterboy, man.
But you have to understand, like, when you're watching it during the time, it's like when people were watching Star Trek back in the 60s, they were like, oh my God, this is great. This is because you have to contextualize it at that time. But if we go back and watch the 60s Star Trek, we're like, this is crap. So just because of special effects and stuff like that. And so during that time, like 2017, 2018, this was great because first of all, it was a different way of telling stories. Second of all, it was a fucking love story, but nobody died. It wasn't, but, and I was really into that. I watched, Sodas, Waterboy, What the Duck, I forget, a whole bunch of other stuff. And I was really into Thai BL. Unfortunately, I had to, for me, and this is just me, I had to pull away from it because there was a lot of colorism in that, oh, you have light skin features, oh, you're beautiful, that's what you are. And that was affecting me. And I'm not, just when I say something's wrong for me, it doesn't mean that, oh, everything is problematic, it has to be changed. No, I just needed to step away. Right. And so I stepped away for a couple of years, and then I saw the same friend. He suggested, and everybody was talking about it on his Facebook page because he has a lot of Thai friends. He's Thai, about 1,000 stars. And so I picked up 1,000 stars again, and I remember my love for BL again. After being away for about a year from watching BL. And then I found, especially during the pandemic, Game Boy, which was, I just liked the way it was shot. I liked the people who were in it, and it offers me another way of storytelling. And it really does. That being said, I'm gravitating more towards Japanese BLs and Filipino BLs, because most of the Thai BLs have gotten into this way of telling a story that I'm kind of used to it. And I was like, I want something a little bit different. Also, watching Japanese BLs helped me with my language classes and stuff like that. So it offers me a different way of looking at the world, and a different way of being, and a different way of thinking, and just a different way of enjoying stuff. So, and also I've had some tough times recently in this year. And I'm like, let me just watch some BL, because it takes me so far away from here. Because even when I watch a lot of Western media, it's grounded here, and it's grounded in what's going on. And I don't want to deal with what's here. I really don't want to deal with it. And just seeing it as just being an escape. It's just totally an escape. So that's my long. Are you warmed up now?
Me? That you mentioned.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you. But yeah, I was gonna say, it's funny that you mentioned Thai BL, because Pixie has been ranting about that same exact issue for the past couple weeks, about how she's really been lately drawn to the Korean and Japanese, because like it brings something, like there was a period where Thai BL was bringing something different, and now like Japanese and Korean BL is bringing something different. So yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been able to watch a Thai BL in months, because I just feel like it's just the same thing over and over again. And yeah.
See, the one thing that I like, the only reason that A Boss and a Babe has caught my attention, and also Moonlight Chicken caught my attention, is because they're just different enough. Like I'm just like, I want something different in Thai BL, and they just give me different enough. It's like A Boss and a Babe is not they've gotten to this point, and like the first 4 episodes, I'm like, wow, this isn't drawn over. And I'm like, what are you going to do next? So it keeps me guessing now. I guess also with Thai BL, since they're like, okay, well, we've been winning with this formula, let's not do anything different. But you have to innovate. You have to innovate, or you're just getting left behind.
Yeah, I mean, there's always this, like, one show that dares to be different. And then after that, like, there's 10 other shows that's copying that show because they saw how popular that one was. And it's just like, can we do something else, please?
Well, then you have the Japanese BL on the other side, who is just like, okay, well, what if we have two people and the world's going to end? So let's just do that. Let's just have a person and one person loses their memory, or let's have this other person who's just unlucky. And it's just like all of these.
Is there one that's eating at a naked dining table?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's random. I have no idea what's going on there.
So no, I love the Japanese BLs. There's something new all the time. Right. I love that they are playing with different kind of storytelling and different kind of mentalities. Like it's not just it's a lot deeper. There's more layers to it. Like you see with My Beautiful Man, like it's very toxic and all of that, but it's there's a point to the toxicness, like there's a story to it, there's like cohesiveness to why they're like they are, and it's not romanticized in any way. So yeah,
I got real tired of watching people in school. I'm like, I'm not in school anymore. Can we just get out of school? Can we move out of school? Even when you see some of the Japanese videos, like, what are you eating for dinner? And the pornographer and all that kind of stuff, where you have older people, and it's like, okay, you know what? We've met, we've fallen in love. What comes after that? Right. Like, what is after that? So, I enjoy that because you can only, oh yeah, high school, we're engineers. No, we're soccer players. We're still in university. I'm like, grow up.
Can we graduate?
Right?
The constant, I don't like any other men than you. No, it's great.
I think what I wanted to talk about, I think I'll just talk about like how BLs influenced me in general, and then maybe I'll go into specifics BLs later. But obviously for me, things are different in that everything started as representation for me. Like growing up in Australia, it is white centric, obviously. And I think all of us here have been exposed to media that reinforces particular beauty standards, but also romance narratives. And so discovering BL, it was kind of like not only like seeing people like you were represented, but it's like, oh, okay, the current structure that I had internally in terms of how I perceived love, I realized at that time, it wasn't catered towards a diversity of people, but also, I think when you internalize things like that, you carry it with you in how you approach relationships or imagine relationships. So for me, before watching BL, like I was just as a person interested or attracted to Asian, white, and whatever, all the others, but I think there was a fear of me if I never dated a white person. This probably might be controversial, but I felt like I would be missing out on something, or like belonging to white culture. And I feel like whiteness is a commodity, and access to belonging. It's a status symbol in white countries. And I felt like, a lot of people maybe who grew up in as immigrants or whatever, it's like a form of security potentially to kind of harness that. So whenever I was like thinking, okay, this Asian guy is cute, I would go, but am I missing out on something? Like, am I gonna have a life that's secure for me, like, internally? Like, those were, I had feelings, and those were sort of like how I processed those feelings. And this always, like, represented itself to me as, like, in the form of Christmas. Like, Christmas is such a romanticized Western thing. I never really had it as a child. Like, we didn't have the concept of Christmas. My parents as immigrants from China. Like, I was like, is Santa Claus real? They're like, sure, babe. And I was like, then how come we get no presents? Like, I asked my teachers, we don't got no chimneys, is that why? And the teacher's like, no, you're fine, dude. And I was like, hello, Santa Claus. So, like, Christmas has been always romanticized by me because there's so many Christmas magical romantic movies and about family, about love, that for me, I was like, sure, I'm going to miss out on White Christmas if I'm not with a white person, and I want to experience the magic and joy. So I realized that I had started deconstructing these narratives, what I call decolonizing my romantic, like, internal structure, through watching BL. And I didn't realize it was happening, and I knew that I wanted to, I think, watch more BL for the representation, to feel seen, but also a part of me was like, I should try and, expose myself to more love narratives. Being so unsuccessful in love, I need to potentially stop having maybe narrow views of, like, what I want, and maybe I can expand that. So there was a point after watching BL where I was like starting to care less and less about Christmas. I was like, I could take it or leave it. It is what it is. It's all good family gatherings. Like, do I want to be a part of that? Like, it's overrated. So, watching BLs, I started seeing more romance stories, Asian guys together, and then they looked happy. And I think for representation, it's like easier to imagine or internalize these fantasies and feeling secure in pursuing things that you feel like will work and be valid if you see a lot of it. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is obviously, like, getting, like, recognition of beautiful Asian men. Like, that was important to me just because it's you don't get represented, like, in that way usually in media, in this attractive role. And so I think it started giving me, like, glimmers of hope that I didn't have to fit into an anomaly in people's attractions or as a fetish or whatever. I could just be liked because people could just find me attractive as I was. So I started getting a bit more confidence in myself in that aspect. And another aspect, I was like, oh, dude, like, all these Asian guys are so attractive. Now I have another beauty stand to live up to instead. So I was like, usually, so now it's kind of like, I don't feel as constricted. I feel like my tastes have altered and evolved. Like, one of the things I noticed recently, I started watching History 3 Tracks, but I had watched one episode at the start of my BL journey, but I dropped it. And at the start, I was kind of like, this is lukewarm, and the guys are okay. But then I watched it a second time, and I was like, wait a minute, like, everyone's really attractive. How did I not see this earlier? And it's just, I don't know why, but you start seeing more like, and you appreciate more. I'm not sure how that happens. I was like, Tengi is fierce and he's fine, and Afe is like adorable and husky, and even like the side couple, Xiaoji, I did not think of anything of him at the first time I watched him, but then recently I was like, he's such a like cutie, so I don't know, like just getting to fill out the picture of qualities that you don't normally associate normally. Like, it's controversial, but that's like the reality of a lot of people who just, grew up in countries that you weren't represented. So Bill's really like, opened my eyes in that way. And I think that's all I had to say just there in terms of like how representation changed things for me. Oh, but also in terms of narratives, right? Like when you watch queer shows, like DC said, for me, they were so, white centric. They weren't my narratives. They were like a dude, maybe he got bullied, but he's like, cute, and then he gets the guy, right? And he has accepting parents, and I was like, it's because you're white. Like, this would not fly in a culture. It would not be this easy, Yeah. And I'm not saying like shows that had white people who didn't have accepting parents aren't valid or aren't the reality, but it's for me, when I was interpreting it, I was like, of course it's easy for you. So when I started watching BLs that actually started, at first it was like amazing because there was no prejudice in Thai BLs. And so that was a fantasy in which I could see Asian societies as the forefronts of queer acceptance. Like, it was a fantasy. I didn't have to contend with going, Western ideology was more progressive. And so, that was more where I should fit, like, or felt welcomed at. I finally went, these are more queer Asian spaces or queer Asian, like, concepts in my head where I could coexist, as an intersectional whatever. And seeing all that acceptance, but also the progress of popularity in comparison to Western queer shows, I was like, hey, hang on a minute, like, maybe things are going to be getting better for people in Asia, and that's really great because I feel like, there's so much work to be done for a lot of people to feel accepted. And watching like narratives where, there was, I don't know if you all watched Diary of Tootsie, but they had a lot of like femmes as their leads. Watching one of them have dinner with his boyfriend, with the boyfriend's mother, that was so like humble and simple, but the gesture of just them being able to be in that vicinity of the parent and the parent not, and just accept them. It was really lovely to see that fantasy of people in that culture be so open-minded, because there's so much, I think, emphasis on having babies, like, in the culture. So it's starting to imagine narratives in BLs where you can kind of shed some weight of living up to heteronormative expectations or internalized expectations put on you by culture and your family, starting to see alternatives where there is a path to happiness. I think it's important to mold those narratives in which you can coexist with your cultural upbringing, bring those things across, but then, feel validated. And that's what I got from Moonlight Chicken as well. The idea of family. Jim still had everybody around him who was his family, even though, he wasn't going to have kids or whatever. He still had everybody. So that's the gist of things for me. And then I can go into like specific BLs. But I should let you all have a turn first.
We can definitely come back to like some of our specific like life-changing shows and such. I feel like I definitely resonated with what you were saying, Edison, in terms of like seeking out queer relationships that felt more representative, because even when you're watching like Western queer media and there is like a relationship that features a person of color, usually the other person in that relationship is going to be white. And so, that really influences your idea of like, okay, well, like, is this what queer relationships for people of color look like? Like, especially in, like, the queer community, there's still so much racism and colorism. And so you're thinking the same way you said, like, okay, well, dating a white person might make it easier for me as a queer person. And so I think when I first started watching BL, I was not out. That didn't happen for like 2 years until like 2018. So like 2 years into my BL journey, I kind of like let myself recognize and admit that I was bisexual. But like, you're always kind of thinking like, why do I have this pool to like this media, that is like featuring these queer relationships? And, at the time I was super into K-pop, I was watching a lot of K-dramas, but like something about, that Asian media getting that queer representation there was just pulling me to it in a way that like regular K-dramas weren't at the time. And I do think it was something about like seeing a relationship, even though I'm not Asian, where two people of color were in a romantic relationship together and like having that representation. And, I have more cultural similarities with, another person of color, whether they're Asian or another ethnicity, than I would with, a white person in a white queer relationship. So I think there was familiarity there and things that still felt relatable to me. And I do think like watching BL was something that helped me kind of walk on the rest of my queer journey. It kind of forced me to be really introspective about why I was so drawn to this media. Like I was in that like overly enthusiastic ally phase. It's like, I'm just really rooting for gay people and like, I just enjoy seeing them fall in love. And it kind of forced me to like be introspective about why that was. Like, hey, maybe you're not straight, babes. Maybe all these times that you were saying, you want to marry X and X female celebrity, like wasn't just a joke. And so like, I feel like BL kind of really helped me. And watching other like queer, like GL and women-loving women media that was out there, even though it was a lot less and still is a lot less than what we have in terms of BL, really just helped me have that introspection. And yeah, I think it was part of my queer journey to a pretty decent degree. And I think that I wouldn't be like as outspoken about my sexuality and things like this, like as I am on the podcast and other platforms, if I hadn't kind of come through that journey in that way. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why it's really like impacted my life. And obviously having this podcast, which we have because of BL, I think has really, as an introverted person, I think it's really changed the way I approach conversations. Like it's really easy for me to type things out and say them online, but like sitting here weekly and like having to formulate my opinions in words and kind of having these discussions with Pixie and Kayla about social issues or just about like what shows and stuff we like, I think has really helped me to be more outspoken as a person in general and not be so like sitting back on my opinions for fear that like I'm gonna say something the wrong way, and this controversial take is gonna offend someone, and like it has happened before, but like like I have people, co-hosts here who work through it with me. I have like community that works through it with me, so like I think it's been really impactful for me in that way, and like helping the way I express myself. And I definitely would not be here on this podcast if it weren't for BL, so I think that is a big impact it's had for me as well. So,
yeah, the podcast has been like a huge part of how the journey has moved along. I mean, I came into this BL world as a white cis het woman. And I came into it because of the storytelling and experiencing stories that had less misogyny in it. Like, it felt safer. It was just, it's a safe place to be, it felt like. And during that time coming into it, I sort of had to like face my own biases with my own culture, my own whiteness, and everything. Like, I still remember the day that I realized, when I look at Asian people as an example, I couldn't recognize details. It's like, it was sort of like when people say, oh, all Asian looks alike. And I was horrified that in my eternal like biases, because I just see white people around me all the time, I couldn't like distinguish Asian people from each other. And that was mind-blowing, the fact that I didn't know that I had that going on was crazy. So for me, like, this whole thing has been sort of a way to understand different cultures and understand different communities and get over myself, sort of, if you know what I mean. And also during this podcast, I had like, with all the discussions we've had, I've sort of gotten the safe place to sort of walk outside my own box, because I've been surrounded by straight people, white people all my life. I've never had a discussion with anyone about anything related to the queer community. And now that with this podcast, I got to do that. I got to discover a lot about myself and understand that maybe I'm not as straight as I thought. And and with that and with that came like the discovery that I'm asexual, and just the freedom that gave me, like, it was like something just opened up in me, that I just, so much of my past relationships about how I feel, about my sexuality and my partner and everything, just like, it just made sense. So this whole journey through BL and the podcast has just made me a lot more sure in who I am, and it's by default made me happier, and I can't really imagine not being here. So yeah, I'm getting a little bit
yeah, and it's getting to me, so stop. Stop it right now.
Yeah, so I'm really grateful that I got to be a part of that, and being like, coming into this as straight, as white, as, yeah, and being so still accepted, and there, like, no gatekeeping. Like, especially with Lexa, I had a lot of stupid ass questions coming into this, and Alexa was so patient and kind with me with answering every stupid ass question I came with, and that really helped me understand myself better too. So yeah.
I'm noticing a kind of theme here, and I feel like I'm going to go along with it. Of just like, I don't know how you would word it, just like, I guess, being more in tune with yourself due to BL, at least in part. But yeah, when I thought of this topic, the first thing I thought of was like the obvious impacts that it had. Like, of course, I was so fascinated by there even being a live action genre of like gay Asian dramas that I wanted to make commentary videos on it. So I did that, and that kind of blew up overnight and launched me into content creation space. And then, of course, Pixie reaching out to me about co-hosting the podcast, which in itself has been a surreal experience as like someone who I would consider myself an outsider to a lot of fandom stuff that goes on, just like getting a glimpse into industry stuff. Definitely had to mention Game Boys because BL gave me like that whole era of Game Boys reactions that I have like so many fond memories of. I think that was the first time I made friends with other people in the BL community, and specifically other Filipino creators, because I'm like pretty isolated in my everyday life. And I think like being so welcomed by that community it impacted my life in a positive way. There was like a sense of like togetherness and belonging that came with that, and just came with like the whole BL boom that happened in the Philippines. So I felt like that was one big thing, like one huge thing, honestly, that like had an impact that was BL related. And yeah, we mentioned maybe talking about some shows that impacted us, but of course, like Love by Chance, my first Thai BL ever, came at a time when I really needed something like it. So that had a big impact on me. And some others are like Theory of Love, Until We Meet Again, and more recently, Cutie Pie. It's just like all of these shows that I took something valuable away from, and I just like found very comforting in the timing of whenever they came into my life. All like positive impacts as well. But because I feel like nothing is solely good, I was also thinking of like ways that BL negatively impacted me. And I don't like mean to be a downer. I feel like this is gonna be such a downer. Maybe we should just cut it. But I'm sure that you guys, Edison and DC, you can relate to this, but whenever you're like doing commentary or reactions to BL and you're a creator who doesn't shy away from discussing certain issues, it opens you up to just so much hatred. And as someone who I feel like you should lead every conversation with humility and empathy. So whenever I don't see that happening and I see like the worst of people, it is like, it's really hard on me. I'm at like the point where I can't read the comments on anything. I can't read comments on my own stuff, on the podcast stuff, on Twitter, and nowhere, because just like the way that people speak to me and speak to each other is like, it like shakes my faith in humanity, honestly. Sometimes it makes me feel like none of this is like worth saving. Like, literally. Because it just, I don't know, there's just like a chorus of people like telling you how stupid you are and like how your perspective's wrong. and calling you like really awful misogynistic things, sometimes even homophobic things, slurs, like literally the worst. And a lot of the time it's just because you like or dislike a show, you know? So, and then if you were trying to get across any important message in all of that, then just forget about it because it was lost. And so it causes you to become like really misunderstood, or at least feel like you're misunderstood, and people are always getting the wrong impression of you and what you stand for, if that makes sense. And that's kind of part of the reason why I decided to finally make a Patreon, because I felt like I spent so much time curating a safe space for others, and I just like really wanted a safe space for myself. Because I felt like I just, by like doing that for others, I took away from like myself. And yeah, like I said, that was kind of a downer, but I promise BL has had more of a positive impact on my life. It's just like, I guess it's the same with any type of, specifically content creation, is you have to kind of juggle being or logging on and off, like literally and metaphorically, because it's always like a struggle to maintain your peace. But yeah. And then like, I don't know. So there's like some other things I could get into. Like I almost sometimes feel like I've personally BL and like I guess discussion around BL that is so deep and so introspective has like sometimes makes me just like hate everything. Like my most recent thing is that I just like am so done and over labels of sexuality and gender. And I feel like I don't want to subscribe to them anymore. And that could be a positive or negative thing depending on how you look at it with BL. But yeah, like I said, definitely had more of a positive impact, and I feel like a lot of that is seen through the podcast with, I mean, like Thailand this year, just having like a platform to like really talk about things with other people, and just like all the opportunities that we have gotten. I feel like it does make it worth it, but I just get in my own head sometimes. So
it's hard, man. It's hard out here. Like like I've said this before, like sometimes it's hard to consider myself like a content creator, because like I feel like my idea of content creator is like so very different from like what I do, even though like I know what I'm doing is content creation, because like we're putting content out on YouTube, like that's, you know, that's what we do. But like sometimes I forget that like, yeah, I guess I'm technically considered a content creator, but I definitely like feel the impacts of it, and like being like hyper paranoid about how people perceive my words, and like especially like, you know, we've had incidents on social media, and like, you know, the idea of like not being able to express what you want to say correctly, and like it gets taken a hold of, and like, you know, next thing you know, like Kayla said, you're being called slurs or being called, you know, having your sexuality and things like that discredited. So I feel like, you know, being a content creator has helped me a lot, but like there is still that, like, as someone who was already like very anxious about the way I'm perceived by people, it's so much of the fact that it's like, you know, something I go to therapy for, like, this has definitely been, you know, something that has impacted that negatively, but I also think it's helped me stand my ground more in situations like that, where in the past, like, I was very much one to just quickly fold and, like,
that's true,
appease other people. So, like, you know, having a platform where, like, I'm able to, like, take a stand and express myself and, like, stand to that expression, I think has been good. But yeah, it's definitely, like, there's definitely parts that are, like, double-edged swords, but
yeah, it does
definitely
help
overall
that we
positive.
sort of it helps that we sort of have each other to lean on in situations. I know I've sort of after a couple of incidents, I tend to shy away from posting anything because, on top of everything, I'm not native English speaker and I don't always have the vocabulary or the grammar to express my opinions in the way I meant it, which sometimes causes misunderstandings, and it's it's not pretty.
I don't think you have to worry about that because I have 2 masters. I've written theses. I know how to construct an argument to the point and research and all this other kind of stuff. And people still, they don't understand me. And it's like when people make it a point to misunderstand you, it's not about what you're doing or what you're putting out. Yeah. That's what they want to do. They want to, like, some people just get up and want to fight that morning and you just happen to be there. And just going back, it's like, I remember, I forget who the cartoonist is. I think it's Sarah something, in which she's like, oh, I like this thing. Let me go into this fandom. And then the next panel has this fandom where it's like everybody's, and then she closes the door. Well, none of that. And that's where I honestly think I was an extrovert, but then people ruined that for me. Now I'm an introvert. But just and it's this funny little dance where it's like, yes, I want to connect with people who like this thing that I like, but not too much, because then there's like the people who, if you don't like it the way I like this, it's not just that you like it, that you have to like it this exact way, or there's something wrong with you. And I've said it before. It's like, okay, you know what? Hey, maybe I don't like that, but it doesn't mean that that's bad. And just people internalize, unfortunately, and that's a them problem. That's not a me problem. But you
I always
internalize something that I was like, oh, okay, I'm not feeling that. And then they think that there's something wrong with them. I'm like,
they take it as like a person.
I ain't talking about you. I'm just, it's not, and it's me talking about, I'm not feeling this and I don't like it. But that's a them problem. They have to worry about that. And I'm not picking that up. So
I will say this, that I think most of our listeners and stuff, like 99% of them are very like open to discussion, that people don't have to always agree and everything. We generally have a very nice comment section and very nice social media presence generally. But yeah, but I think like we've been very open with what we think about things. I just like, we have discussions all the time about controversial stuff and why we think what we think, and the fact that it's okay to disagree.
Yeah.
And like me, Alex, and Kayla are like, we don't have the same taste in BLs, but we never argued to the point that it wasn't funny anymore.
Serious, yeah.
We have on purpose had some funny arguments, but it's never been to the point where after a discussion, I felt like I was attacked for my opinions, or that I went into attack mode because I was offended by an opinion. So, yeah.
Yeah, and for Kayla, like, if it helps, like, your presentation of topics is so eloquent and masterful and succinct and so gentle and
so well worded.
It doesn't come across as aggressive. It just comes across like an auntie going, "This is the right way, dears." Like, I think I watched your romanticization of, abuse or whatever the title was called, but like that really opens my eyes along my reactor journey, because it got me started, it's got me starting to think about the things that I ignored that were problematic. And that was you were sort of my gateway in being like more outspoken about these topics, because I was like, Kayla has a point, like the way she expressed it, the way she had examples. I never saw this before, and I was like, I should really pay more attention to these things. So the impacts that you have, like, even for all of us, like, I don't know the impact that I have, but at least assume that it's out there, because it is. Well, for you, you've got a lot more views on your video, like anything that we've done. But no, it was great. It really sucks that there is backlash, and I think it's not a perspective that I think about, because like I remember you talking in one of your videos about being a reactor, that the way you present, because I'm cis male, like, people are meaner to you. Like, the comments that I get, I can brush off. Like, it might be my temperament. Maybe I'm used to it by now, like, after doing it for 2 years, but any negative comments that I get, it shakes me for 1 second, and then I'm like, you're beneath me. So, like, when people have incorrect opinions, it's just like, why do I even bother? Like, I gave my piece. You weren't convinced. Obviously, it'll take time, So, that's how I'm just,
I kind of feel like Kayla, when she does one of her videos on topics, and like, she puts her entire soul into that video. So I can understand that if she does get some backlash, that it hits harder. But it shouldn't, because like, I don't always agree with you. I will say that, like, I don't always agree with what you're saying in the video, but I understand where your opinion comes from, and it's a valid opinion to have. So
I think for me, I'm just going to speak for me, and it's because for me, coming to spaces and also getting my opinion, which is based on my experience and stuff like that, and to get those microaggressions, they aren't. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. For last week, for the last month, I've been getting shit, and this is just an additional twig on top of my identity that I've got. So
exactly, that's exactly why it has been, because it never ever used to bother me, like ever, and then when I'm having a hard time in like my everyday life, it starts to really bother me, because it's like, well, everything is to shit. So yeah, it depends on, I think, what is going on in my life too. If I feel more or less agitated by things that I see.
I get that. Yeah. But also, I remember sometimes when I'm getting real ornery, I'm just like, you only saying that because you're not in front of me right now. Because you're behind the keyboard and you're far away and stuff like that. And it's like, people get real big and bad when there's like a whole bunch of space, or they can do it hiddenly. So it's like, especially calling you names and all this other kind of stuff, which has nothing to do with what is being said.
Yeah.
I've sometimes watched comments or people comment on stuff like that, and I'm like, you have made up this whole story in your mind that has nothing to do with what was right here. Like, where's this?
Yeah.
So, you good. So.
At the end of the day, we can all recognize that Kayla is an icon, no matter what other people may say.
Right?
Right, like, I feel like you're so nice. Like, I'm so rude sometimes with my thoughts.
Same.
I'm just
I always feel
how
like
are people hitting on everyone else?
I always feel like I'm nice too, but then I'm like, well, maybe I was being too mean. I don't know.
No, you're definitely very nice.
You are very nice.
Yeah.
That's no. You do a lot of emotional labor when you're like thinking about, okay, how's this other person? I want to express this, but then also I have to do all that, and how is that's you doing too much emotional labor now, and just don't. I think that second guessing of yourself is also an additional stress for you, and you don't need it.
Yeah, second guessing is my personality. Yeah.
But yeah,
and that is
Let's
how
get
BL
back to
has
the discussion.
right.
I don't know. We want to like go back and talk about some of the shows that have specific shows that have really impacted us, and kind of use that as our wrap-up conversation.
Yeah, so for like, obviously what had a great impact to me was watching Tharntype. Since it was no, listen, it was my first Thai BL, okay? It was what got me into watching Thai BL. So we can discuss the issues, which I do agree there are many, but it did impact me a lot.
So.
And I will say this, like a show like Tharntype, with the blatant issues in it, it did create a discussion in the community as a whole, and I personally feel like Mame as a writer has grown since then. Not to the point where she should be, but she has visibly gotten better.
So you can ask sometimes. At least get better.
Baby steps.
Baby steps. I'm thinking about how we both ranked the first story in Love in the Air of 5, and then the second one a 0 or a 1. Whatever.
That was so funny. I was dying. Like, first I was the first one to rank it, and I was just like, yeah, the first story 5, the second 1. And then Kayla's turn was up, and she's just like, 5.
Kayla just looked at me and was like,
and I was
yeah.
dying. I was fucking dying. I didn't expect it.
What can I say? What can I say?
Connected. We were connected when I came to visit you guys.
Out of all things from a Mame show. That's the crazy part.
That's the great
Oh, good times.
I think for me, one of the shows that, like, as a BL fan has had, like, the greatest impact on me was probably Until We Meet Again. I feel like that's the show that really, like, catapulted me into the BL fandom. And kind of like what DC was saying before about, like, them using BL as an escape from their real life. Like, 2019 was a shit year. Like, my dad died and, like, all this other stuff. So, like, you know, I was, like, seeking escapism, and I was, like, really looking for, like, something that could kind of like help me get through that. And I think like the attachment that I got to Until We Meet Again and the story that it was telling, and just like the actors and everything that show had. I feel like that was the first time I really felt that connected to a BL show. And that late 2019 into early 2020, kind of coinciding with the start of the pandemic, was when I really started to seek out like online spaces for BL. And like that's kind of what brought me to Discord, and Discord's where I met Pixie. And then like it kind of started like the whole catalyst of like now we're sitting here like having this discussion on a Saturday afternoon for me. So I think when I'm thinking about shows that have had like the most impact on me as a BL fan, like that one is probably up there, and like it still sits as one of my all-time favorite BLs. That probably plays into it, but also just story-wise, like it, you know, it just has had the most impact for me as a story over the years. So yeah, it's definitely up there.
Did you like Between Us?
I made it to episode 5, 6.
Alexa, did you finish it?
I have mixed feelings.
What?
So I get it.
It's just like,
Yeah, okay, this podcast is over.
It.
I'm sorry. It's over. We're breaking up.
Sorry. Edison's starting a fight.
Right.
Instigating.
I don't know. I think it was like part of a situation where it was like I hyped it up for so long as like the sequel to Until We Meet Again, and seeing all the cast again, and then like I watched it and I just felt bored with it, and I don't know. Part of it was like I think me at the time, but yeah, maybe I have to try starting it again.
I think for me, Between Us was a lot about nostalgia. I think they sort of dropped the ball because they started off sort of intense and just let it smolder away. And I think the sort of purest views of New is the reason, because he's very like, I don't think, like, I agree that over-sexualizing BL is not a good thing, but when you literally have a story about sex friends, basically, and you on purpose take it out of the story, it's just, like, where is the story? And to be honest, Between Us is a story that might not be the greatest to be on a TV screen, considering, I mean, it's sort of porn with plot, but yeah.
At least it's porn. Like, some shows have neither, and you're like,
oh, true.
Something.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. New has been dropping every show he's been making lately, and I just like I used to have so much faith in him.
I really like My Only 12%, but I think that was the one that he didn't direct. So
right.
I didn't direct it. I don't know, but I mean, he's the director of A Boss and a Babe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Question mark. So
yeah, he is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna mention Until We Meet Again, and then you mentioned it, Alexa. So
we're all like Until We Meet Again fangirls, like. Yeah.
So now I'm gonna mention Theory of Love because, kind of in the same boat for me. Like that was the first series I think I ever watched Offgun in. Like I remember seeing bits and pieces of Puppy Honey, but I didn't watch the full thing.
Okay. Yeah, you
yeah, I don't think I'm going to. But just like instantly being like so captivated by their acting, I think that's what really drew me in. And then like I loved looking at all the production aspects of the show, since that's semi what I went to school with or for is like their major in the show. And I think that's the show that made me realize that I really love the unrequited love trope, but also like the soulmates trope, but also the friends to lovers trope.
To lover superiority, yes.
And so, yeah, that show had it all. And of course, I love sad stuff. So it had an impact on me in that way, just because like I related a lot to Third's character. Like even we just reacted to our old episode, and one of the characters that was my favorite was Third. And I think that's still true. Like I just instantly connected with his character, and I think that Gunn is like, it's one of those things where he's the only one that could have played that character. So just from like a storytelling and production standpoint, that show has always really stuck with me. The music in the show has also really stuck with me. I still listen to the OST. And yeah, there's obviously a lot of nostalgia, because that period in time for GMM TV was back in the day now. Like that was whenever it was only engineering stories and nothing else really. So that was the series that brought something. Yeah, it was the series that brought like art gaze, as everyone called it. Yeah. So I think a lot of it has to do with like nostalgia, honestly, but I think that series had a big impact on me because I just like it. Like I think the story's good. I related to it. It had a lot of themes that I liked, and just the timing was good. So yeah, it impacted me a lot, and honestly still does.
I really love Theory of Love because not only was it a great story, it also, the way in which they were in art school and things like that, even though I just crapped on university stories, but the way that they were in art school, but the way that they tied in different Hollywood movies into it. So and I was like, wow, 10 Things I Hate About You, Love Actually, or something else. And those are all love stories, and also building on that. And it was just, I just think that story was masterfully done. So yeah, it was so good. And that was also my first off gun. Like that was like my first off gun, and I was like, wow, they're great. So yeah. And Kayla just mentioned the OST, listen to the OST. So that got me thinking about liking the movies, because that was such a good one. But the one that really, not early on, I'm not going to pick Sodas or Waterboy. I'm going to pick, believe it or not, My Ride. And the only reason for My Ride, and this is why it has a special place for me, is because I like the story so much. I picked up the original novel. Like so it was a BL that got me into reading BL novels. It's like, oh my God. And so the author, Patrick, I cannot say his last name, I'm sorry, Ramastat or something like that. I read My Ride, I Love You, and then I started reading everything else that he's written that was been translated into English legally, because I wanted to make sure that he got money or whatever, and I just didn't want to. I really wanted to support him, and so, and also dimples, those dimples. But it was really a story about different classes, because you have the one person who was a doctor and things like that, and then you have a motorcycle rider, and just the way that they got through all that. And it was the tenderness that Fluke showed the doctor. It's like, that, and this is, I don't normally do, so I was like, that would be nice. Like that I think, as much as I'm like, I'm single, I don't need no man, and I'm like, I don't need nobody. I'm like, maybe that right there, that's nice. Like, even though I'm so, and it's amazing how I'll watch BL, I'll get a way for it, an escape. But still, there's still this part of me that's jaded about relationships. But that acting, that story, and just all of his stories has gotten through that crack, I'm going to say. So, yeah, my ride. And it just came at a point in time where, as far as Thai BLs, it was just something different. Because in a lot of Thai BLs, you also saw that it always showed either middle class or upper middle class and all this other kind of people. But it didn't bring in this motorcycle rider who was from a lower class, but then also he had his uncles who were gay and living together, and just all of this other parts of that story. Even his girlfriend saying like, "Hey, I don't want to be with you anymore because you poor." But it was this other aspects that I didn't normally see in Thai BL or in Thai BL. So yeah, I liked it. It was my ride for me. It just caught me at the right time. So
yeah, I prepared a lot in my head for this discussion for like which BL impacted me the most. For me, like, there are moments where I feel really seen in a BL. Sometimes it's like these Taiwanese shows, because it's like the language closest to the one that I can casually speak, where the parents have the conversation of coming out and stuff, and you're kind of like, oh, holy crap, like that, they're almost like my parents, and it's really interesting to go, there's some sort of universality to what I've gone through, and I'm seeing it, like, because someone else is wanting to tell that narrative. One of the BLs that's impacted me in my life is, I'm sure I talked about this with DC, is the Kabakoji Nekoyashiki Wants to Be Recognized BL, Japanese BL. And I don't know if Kayla relates to this, but it really, really spoke to me because it was a character in a creative field as the main character.
Yeah.
And there was a message, like BLs in general, I think, or at least the Thai ones that we're used to, are kind of an industry, like a fan service industry built on money. And usually there's not a lot of life messages or messages about relationships or self. This one, Nekoyashiki, felt very about telling a story on just about how to grow as a person, and how the interconnectedness of your self-worth and love. For me, on the surface, I can see like what the story about, but when I really connected with the character, and it could be like me projecting, was towards the final episodes, because I just realized like Nekoyashiki, or was it like Michan, or whatever his name was, he was an exaggerated version of people who didn't really believe in themselves or have any sort of self-esteem. We watched him have such an obsession getting on that wall, and we didn't know why. Like, I think in Asian cultures, a need to be successful in what you do. And I internalize that a lot. I want to be really good at what I do. And you rely on external validation for that. The wall for him was a stamp of approval. And I understood that. But then there was another layer to it, because at the end, it wasn't the wall's recognition. It wasn't external validation from the wall or that status. It was him wanting to believe that he was good enough for Issei. And I think him having an external validator, someone telling that he was really good at what he did, he needed something of value to start believing in himself. But even when he had that, he was struggling to maintain it. He still never believed in himself. And then, there was a point where he flipped a switch. There was a catalyst. And there were moments along the way in which he let go of not being on the wall, and he found validation from within. He started drawing what he wanted to, and that made him happy. And seeing him, especially from the start, compare himself to this rookie, who he was like, dude, you're not on my level. Seeing this rookie in such a small time replace his position, but him not caring about it, was really eye-opening, because I would have felt so slighted. I was like, my trajectory and my, value and capacity as an artist is so diminished by that. But in really just finding self-validation from within, with him learning how to do that and do what he wants, and, feel like that's enough, was really eye-opening, because I was like, I could totally take that journey, or I have taken that journey with him along the way, in a way where, I was always, even for the YouTube, kind of comparing myself to other channels. But at the end of the day, I was like, I am happy with the content that I produce, because it's authentic and it's true to myself. So that really affected me, because it gave me a lot of confidence and gave me a vehicle to navigate how I thought about myself. I thought I needed to be successful. And I tied a lot of self-worth in that. And when I did that, I didn't think I was good enough for other people, because I didn't have something in which people could be like, wow, you're accomplished. Wow, you're worthy of my time.
Yeah.
And so, like, the way he constantly rejected Issei, it was like, I didn't believe that this person could love me, because I don't believe in that possibility of being loved. And there was a really big moment where Issei was on this interview, and he was talking about how he admired Nekoyashiki. Nekoyashiki didn't let that process. Issei said, the person that I like, I admire them so much because they're constantly pursuing what they love. And I find that really amazing. And those words, someone loving you or someone admiring you just for trying at your passion, it never was uttered in any other mediums. It never was a thought that entered my head. I always saw my career trajectory as a struggle, as floundering, as wasting time, as not being productive member of society, and I was like, I feel like a loser. Like, why would anybody want to be with that? But
oh my gosh, I just relate so much to that character for the same exact reasons. Yeah. There's so much finally, I could say.
Oh, you can say it. Finally seeing somebody, it was weird. Like, it was a fictional character saying those words, and you're like, this is made up, but deep down that because it's there, it must have some reality to it. So knowing that somebody could just admire you for being you and not for your accomplishments, how successful you are, it meant a lot because I kind of was just like, I am enough right now, you know? So Issa was amazing, like a wonderful, shining, positive light. And so that meant a lot to me, like starting to get those thoughts and internalizing them. And that's the journey that I'm taking. I found a lot of self-assuredness in just kind of going, this is what I'm doing. I'm still finding my way. It doesn't matter. It's okay. People might not like that, but I'm not going to let that like bring me down or affect my insecurities anymore.
I really love that with the Japanese BLs, most of them there's like this substance to the story, and there's depth to it. And I was just thinking, like, even a simple cute show like Old Fashioned Cupcake had a lot of like underlying substance to it, and I think that's such a masterful thing to do, because it's so easy to just like make it superficial, but if you really look at the story and really look at what the characters are going through and even how they filmed it, it just, there's so much there.
Especially with the main character in that show. Another thing that like impacted me watching it was how whenever he starts trying to, I guess, do what he really wants to do, there's no monetary gain to it, and it results in him like losing his spot where he was previously. So it's kind of like for him it reinforced the idea of him just not being shit. Like it reinforced the like horrible self-esteem that he already had, because he was like, well, see, I always knew this was going to happen, and now it is. It's like that idea of also maybe like the things that you do not being seen as worthwhile if there isn't like a significant monetary gain to it is something that I resonated a lot with his character and that series.
Yeah, and it was, I think for Japanese BLs, they always have a message, but for this one, it was like, I think a distinction for me, because a lot of love narratives are about being saved, or like someone
true
kind of like coming in and fixing your life. And I feel like that's such a high expectation and a little unhealthy. And for this one, even though the character was there and gave him inspiration, the change came from within. And so I think that's a really important message when it comes to like redefining how we perceive love and how we perceive relationships, and that we should start deconstructing or figuring out like the work we put in, because I feel like in a lot of Thai shows, it's just one character has insecurities and it's a constant battle of reassurance. But it's like, it's kind of like so codependent. It's like, I love you. But it's never the other person going like, I know it, like, I deserve to be loved, and I know you love me because I'm great. Like, it's just always, that's the thing about, I don't want to drag Secret Crush on You down, but like, Cha and Billy, what's his face, when they were like so insecure and they were like, I love ya, like, I'd never leave me, and it was just kind of like, you'll deserve each other, but also like it wasn't romantic, it was gross. Like, it's just it's the codependency of insecurity. It's just not it, like, the way to progress. And I don't think people should like grow up and go, I need someone to like just fulfill me, because the insecurity is always going to be there. It's going to be recurring. The constant reassurance is it's going to wear down, and I think, and I just interested also in just like how, the lessons are there, if there are any at all, like going forward in BL. Because I feel like there's so much capacity to make statements and explore things.
Yeah, I think I hope BL will move a little bit away from this whole damsel in distress sort of way of telling a story. I think it's there is a lot of heteronormative storytelling, and there doesn't need to be, but I understand why there is. But I also, like we were talking about in the beginning, I hate like the gender labels. I feel like gender labels are for okay, it shouldn't matter if you're a woman or man on how you're treating someone. Like, it doesn't matter. Why do you need to know someone's gender for talking to them? What are you trying to get out of that? And it's just a way on labeling people to knowing where they rank in society. Man higher, woman lower, like gay man lower than white man. Like, it's the labels that are just there to show who's superior. And it's all fucked up.
That's kind of why I'm done with them.
I completely agree.
I was going to say, kind of to what Edison was saying about the codependency. This is where I'm going to get on my high horse about my school president again, because one of the things that was so, like, unexpected about that show is the communication and reassurance and, like, confidence they had in their relationship as people who are meant to be high schoolers. Like, better communication and healthier relationship than most of the adults that we've seen in Thai BLs. And so I think, the way they communicated with each other and respected each other's passions and career choices and the way they approached those was like something that set it apart from a lot of that codependent storytelling that we get in a lot of BLs. And I did not expect it from GMMTV or a high school series in the way it was told. But like, that's kind of like one example I thought of when Edison was mentioning kind of like that codependency relationship. Because I do agree that like the like constant need for reassurance and codependency and the damsel in distress narrative that Pixie mentioned is very rampant in BL. And like, that was one example in recent Thai BLs where I was like, it felt like it was a little bit different and kind of stepped away from that. And that I think is part of the appeal for at least me. But I also felt like I need to mention, even though it's not a BL gap, as the impact that it's had. Like, first of all, like, it's not a perfect series. I think, like, I recognize that, and I think most of the people who are fans of the show do. But, like, the impact of, like, being a queer woman and seeing, like, the first major girls' love series air and, like, seeing the success that it's had and the way people have taken the series in and kind of seeing that there's a place for GL in this community and in this fandom was, like, a huge impact. But also, like, more than that, as, like, a bi person, and this is kind of, like, rooted back in biphobia, but, like, also just, like, as a queer person who hasn't dated anyone in years, let alone someone who is not a man, I think there can be a lot of, like, insecurity and doubt in my sexuality, and, like, I have these moments of, like, am I just saying I'm bi to be woke? Like, like, I don't know, like, is this just something, like, I've talked myself into because I exist in such a, like, queer space on the internet? So I think, like, watching that show and specifically watching the finale and the wedding scene and just, like, the emotional, visceral reaction I had to two women getting married and, like, seeing that in queer media and the way I was sobbing was just kind of, like, this moment of, like, reassurance that, like, this means something to me because I am a queer woman, because I am attracted to women and like, I have this desire to have that for myself with another woman or somebody else, like, I could see myself in that moment, like, not necessarily getting married, but, like, having that, like, relational moment with another woman. And so I feel like that show had, like, a lot of impact for me, and, like, as a queer woman, kind of just, like, reassurance, I guess, in a way. And yeah, I don't know. I just felt like I had to, talking about like shows in this genre that have impacted me, I felt like I had to give good old Gavin
I want to, I want to give a shout out to Bad Buddy, because for two reasons. One, for the main character's relationship, you didn't see as you didn't have the one coded as the top, one the other coded as the bottom. It was like, it was a very equal thing. Even when they got to the end, it was like, okay, my turn now. It's like, there was this like, we stand versus kings, and it seemed like a power balance with their relationship. But then also for me, and this was kind of like after I watched Pearl Next Door, which was, I love Pearl Next Door, but it had Milk Love in there. And Edison can tell you, like, when we were reacting to it, I was like, that's going to be the side couple. I hope they're going to be the side couple. Yeah. And then
that moment of like, are they actually like, yeah.
Right. And then where they're just seeing that cute little stuff that they were doing, I'm like, ah! And just the way that Milk Love are, and they just act and all this other kind of stuff, I'm like, oh, I want that for myself. And it's just a visualization of the full spectrum of queerness, and seeing that, yes, I know it's BL, but then guess what? Gay guys have lesbian friends, and they also have ace friends. They have like there's these other
people flock together.
Right.
Literally.
Pixie is my ace friend. Hi.
Same.
And then that's one thing I liked about Not Me, is because there were trans people in there, and there were trans people with agency in there. And it's like, BL is great and stuff like that. But sometimes just seeing only cis men there, it's great in that, okay, this is different from your regular homonormative media. So it's different in that way, but it's also in and of itself can be homogenized to only be like cis male and stuff like that, which is like, it's too much of while it's being different, it's too much of the same different. I don't know if that made any sense, but yeah, so
definitely.
No, that reminded me of when me and Sam started watching Sodas. And in that was our first BL, and that was my friend Sam. Another Asian, we were watching it, and they came up with these like two femme guys who were just like gossiping about the other people, and they were really like, camp. But we were like, that's us, like, seeing Asian femmes together, just kind of like at the school table being bitches or whatever. It was like so great. And it was just, like the amount of like, not every type BL has it, but like there are some BLs that do have some really lovely trans characters, some really lovely effeminate men. And I think sometimes they do give them their props, other times it is a bit of a joke, but I think eventually we'll get to a place where we'll have more daisies, and we'll have hopefully daisies that are more in lead roles. But that's something I really, enjoy, that I would not see it, that it isn't in a BL, and something that I wish would happen more. Even with like, when I was watching Close Friend, the trailer, I was like, okay, this feels very queer to real life. But there was a clip of them that I watched of them dancing, And I was like, none of these guys are femme. Like, they can't dance. So it was like, kind of like, where's your femme representation, or where's your, like, you know, femme, like, it's just, I just wish some people would just, like, snap more. Like, people say, like, stereotypes are bad in that way.
Yeah.
But for me, it's not bad unless it's the only thing you see in a negative light.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Lovely Writer did put like a pressure on how they cast in BLs and how they shy away from feminine presenting males or feminine males. So I think it's a long step. But I do, like, you see, in it becomes more common as time passes. And I know, like, BL has grown a lot in the, 2 last years. It's come a really long way. And I think as the fandom grows and as the call for inclusivity and just the support for inclusivity in the shows that are already out is really helping to push it forward. So hopefully, like, it will continue to grow. But also, especially Thai BLs, I can't get over the sameness that is happening right now. And I really hope, like, one of the newer, like, GMM TV shows or something will, like, snap me out of it. Dangerous Romance or Only Friends.
Yeah, I know. That's what you're waiting for.
Yeah, I just want to, like, go back and just because I'm gonna probably mess up her name. This Black feminist Adichie, where she says it's not that stereotypes are untrue. It makes the one story the only story, and so if we at least have a different variant of different trans characters, femmes characters, and things like that, that's where it's not dangerous. Like, if it's just one of, but when we keep seeing the same thing over and over again, people start to internalize it and say, okay, that's the way those people are, because that's the only thing I see.
Yeah,
instead of
back in the day with the sitcoms and, like, American sitcoms with the gay best friend,
right?
And it sort of started like this wave with every, like, white girl out there just like, oh, I want a gay best friend.
It's like, I need my gay best friend.
It's just like, they're not a purse. It's great.
Yeah. There is that repercussion, but it also started this wave of, like, which is good, like, representing queer men in all different types. But then we started getting, like, barely any, like, gay, like, flamboyant people. I mean, there's still, like, stuff, like, out there, but it
like
just
you go from
was
one extreme to the other, basically.
Right, and the narrative of, like, where just, like, everybody else is also problematic, you know? Like, it's fine to be different, you know? So it's a weird balance. I have such a battle with Fish Upon the Sky, because their only femme guy was a stalker, but they had these 4 straight guys doing a makeover, and I was like, how dare you? How dare you take these jobs away from these femme people?
Oh no.
It was so rude. Like, you just had an opening there, and I get, like, you don't want to, like, perpetuate stereotypes, but, like, I just couldn't take it when people were like, oh, it's so refreshing that those guys were straight and the people giving them makeover. It's like we get not enough visibility as it is, that we don't need that.
I'm all for normalizing, like, cis straight men being feminine. I mean, that's fine, but it's I think it's more about, okay, know your audience and know the genre. Rather, if you want those feminine straight men, put them in the normal shows And not in the BL where we're actually like looking for the presentation, or the representation.
Well, yeah, the little bit of Lovely Rider that I did watch, I was like really actually into the straight couple. Like, I know they're not straight, but like, again, I'm getting an echo. There was a role reversal in their presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was really cute to see.
Yeah, I agree.
I was like, I'm rooting for the heads. I mean, like, what is happening?
We've been talking for 2 hours now. Give and take.
So. Yeah, oh my god. It's getting close to midnight here, so.
Take us out, Kayla.
Oh god. Just off the cuff. Well, thank you, Edison and DC, for sitting to talk with us for like 2 hours. I feel like we could go on, but because it's getting late for Pixie, we're going to wrap up. Yeah, you can find, we're going to leave all the links to their channels, social media in the description. That again is Femmes React. Thank you for watching today's episode, this week's episode, rather. And I forget all the rest of our outro. Leave a comment, leave a like.
Oh my god, can we make another star?
Friend.
How do I do that?
Another heart?
Another heart, right.
Oh my god, I can't do this. Wait. No, this one's easier. Leave a heart.
Alexa, you
hearts in the chat.
You need to do the V, Alexa.
I'm trying. You guys have to get closer to the edge.
Wait, I am at the edge.
Yeah. Everyone
every time
grab your screenshots. Yay, everyone screenshot. Post them on Twitter again.
Yeah. Yes, and everyone should leave a comment and tell us about how BL has changed their lives.
Push that engagement picture.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I'm just nosy. I want to know.
That too.
But yes, thank you for watching this week's episode, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
It makes a big difference here, because it's like, it's the difference between it gets dark at like 4:30 and it gets dark at like 8:30, and like,
oh wow,
I would prefer the latter, because otherwise I am painfully depressed more than I already am. So like,